This is one troop of Vanguard veterans. These are two troops of Vanguard veterans, and this is the chapter I'm running for Space Marines. See my issue? Hi, this is ManaScrew, I'm Ruben, and maybe you don't see my problem. That's okay. It's a very specific one that I've found myself falling into. You see, I love salamanders, and for the longest time I've had this idea of a teal turquoise army with kind of brass inlays and ornament, and then accented with bone white and sort of off black. I have one really long hair that's gone across the wrong side. However, sad little me had no outlet for these two things. Salamanders have no successor chapters, they said. You can simply make your own Space Marine chapter, they said. And I tried. I drew pictures, I wrote lore, and for the longest time I was thinking about how I would make this army. And then this got released.
I was flicking through the 9th edition Space Marines Codex, and I got to the section about successor chapters. As I was flicking through, I found one that interested me more than the others. So I began chopping and slicing and kit bashing my way through the Indomitus box and beyond. They said orc hunters, so I added orc corpses and orc diorama bases. They said dragon spears, so I've replaced every chainsword with a spear. They said endo-cannibalism, and I said, oh wait, that's a little weird. On and on I went until I had captains, I had chaplains, I had librarians, but what I didn't have was Vanguard veterans.
That is until today. Now, what is the point of this whole section? Is it just self-indulgence? Pretty much, but it's also to show you how dedicated I am at kind of sticking to the concept and keeping with the lore here. The Dragon Spears were part of the Ultima founding, which, if you don't know, in the lore is basically a new age of Space Marines where a bunch of new chapters were created only as Primaris, meaning there are no Firstborn Marines. Vanguard veterans are Firstborn Marines, so if I'm keeping with the lore, doesn't really fit. Now, we have very little lore when it comes to the Dragon Spears. Basically, at the time of this video, it's just the paragraph that comes with the Space Marine Codex. So that means, like I said, I kind of have to assume that there are no Firstborn Marines in this chapter, which there probably aren't. So that means if I'm going to be running my Vanguard veterans, I'm going to be having to convert them into some hacky-slashy, stormy, shieldy Primaris. Hence the video.
I'm going to be showing you my journey kit bashing my Vanguard veterans. But what does kit bashing mean? Essentially, kit bashing is when you take two or more boxes or kits of models and mix bits and start making something new. It's marginally different from the term converting, as converting is changing a miniature to be different from what it originally was, whether that's using other parts or custom sculpting something. Essentially, all kit bashing is converting, but not all converting is kit bashing, if that makes sense. The first thing I usually do when I begin kit bashing is I have this big concept of how everything's going to work, but I need to look through the kits to size up and find the parts that I specifically need. You can also often easily find parts by looking through the instruction booklet that comes with the box. Once we have our parts, it's time to clip them out of their sprue. Now, this particular sprue has some pretty significant mold lines showing. Usually I have a harder time capturing more subtle mold lines on camera, but these ones are pretty easy to spot. Mod lines are always a bother when it comes to putting together miniatures. None of us want to be sitting around dealing with them when we could be gluing and cutting and sticking. But as long as we're patient about shaving them away with the backs of our knives, they won't cause us any issues down the line. Once all of our mod lines are removed, we can go about removing the tabs that attach the model to the sprue. In my opinion, it's always a better idea to clip conservatively and then come in with our knife later and clean those tabs up. Now that all our bits are prepared, we can whip out the glue. I personally have recently started using Tamiya extra thin cement. I really just like the applicator is the main reason why I use it. And you really don't need to use a lot of plastic glue or poly cement, as it melts the plastic, so when you press the two pieces together, they essentially fuse as the plastic re-solidifies over the next hour or so. We place the bits together, give them a firm squeeze, and then we're on to attaching the legs. With parts like these, I first like to dry fit them together before I apply the glue, so I can kind of get everything together without dragging the melted plastic anywhere it shouldn't be. So, slap on some glue, and after a few minutes, we've got those legs attached. Thus far though, we've seen no kit bashing, just normal model building. So, let's take a look at the part I was the least sure about coming into this. Firstborn Marines are a fair amount smaller than Primaris Marines, and I want to see if their arms look stubby if used directly from the Vanguard Veterans kit. I tried sizing them up next to each other, but ultimately decided I would need to use some blue tack to kind of prototype what they'd look like when they're glued onto the model. Blue tack provides enough stickiness that we can keep both of our arms in place and check their length. Looking at it from the front, I think we could get away from it, but I'm not sure if it's just my eye, but the side view of the firstborn arm does look pretty stubby. Well, I guess that's more work for me to do. So I'll go find a suitable arm from the Intercessor kit, and then we'll attach a Thunder Hammer from the Vanguard Veteran kit. The Assault Intercessor kit does come with a single Thunder Hammer, but we need multiples for our Vanguard Veterans, and also the Vanguard Veteran Thunder Hammers kind of just look more unique. I prefer them anyway. For precise cuts like this, I tend not to like using my clippers. Clippers can warp the plastic, causing one side to kind of pinch in. Instead, I take a knife and make a cut, and then pull out my hobby saw and cut along that line. This way I can guarantee a straight cut instead of a pinched one, and we can come back in later and sure it up with our knife. Once that's done, we have a nice thunder hammer toting arm. Now for the other arm. My Marines are going to be wielding storm shields, but I really want to give them kind of a unique look because I never really enjoyed the stubby little ones that come with the original box. So I found some that I really liked on puppetswar. These are called Achilles shields, and I'll leave a link to them down in the description in case you're interested. They come with a handy gauntlet that's going to save us some of the work in attaching a hand. We go through a similar process to how we already have to get the new arm, and I try to shave it and compare it regularly with the gauntlet to try and get the surfaces as flat and fitting together as nicely as possible. Once all that's done, I just need to attach these two pieces together. Now, one of these is resin and one is plastic, so we can't use polycement or plastic glue, we instead have to resort to using super glue. The surfaces here are large enough that I'm not super worried about the brittleness of super glue, so we can just apply a tiny bit of super glue, and you can see the main benefit of super glue is how fast it lets us stick the shield to the arm. After this, I use a bit of blue tack, so I can really start to see how everything's going to come together. Now, a big part of Vanguard Veterans are their jump packs, so I wanted to use the originals here too, but almost all of mine that I put together had these huge gaps in between two parts down by the thrusters. To solve this, I got out my gap filling medium and pushed it into the gap using my knife. Then I scraped away the excess. Once this was done, we'll have a nice uninterrupted surface down the thruster. Next, I could glue the arms and get the pose of our Marine down. The original pose of the Assault Intercessor was a charge, but I kind of wanted to let our boy look a little bit more like he's doing a tactical advance, shield high and stepping forwards. The Dragon Spears are a Salamander successor chapter, so I grabbed a custom head for them since most of Games Workshop's standard ones are military white guy. This head is also from Puppetswar, and I use the Puppetswar heads a lot because they have these really expressive sculpts. Again, not in any way endorsed. Now the bulk of our Marine is done. Haha, just kidding. I've got to jab at it with my knife. My Dragon Spears are roughed up from close combat with orcs, so we're going to be making slash wounds. Then I'm going to go in with the point of my knife and form guide holes for my drill. I'd usually use a pin vise, but to expedite things and to be a little bit extra chaotic here, I chose to use my Dremel. Okay, so hardcore battle damage montage out of the way. I also wanted to make their appearance less generic and more realistic by adding some packs, holsters, and oath papers. Once we're done gluing these in place, it looks a little something like this. We also went on to make a base, simply finding and placing a few rocks so that they match the shape of the feet so that we have the best sort of surface area for gluing later on. At this point, our Marine is almost done. Only I have a few aspects of my chapter specifically that I want to hit on. A big part of the Dragon Spears chapter in my mind is this idea of memories, of their brothers and their fallen foes. They partake in, just a little bit of endo-cannibalism to retain the memories of their brothers, and they also are listed as having spent a lot of time around the Space Wolves. I think with these two things together, it kind of makes sense in my head that they would keep some trophies and memories from their past battles. They're also successors of salamanders, so I feel like customizing their armor and weapons with trophies is definitely within the realm of possibilities and creates a pretty cool aesthetic in my mind. On this Marine, I decided it would be cool to use the Orc's lower jaw to kind of accentuate his knee pad. It took a bit of trimming and shaving to get the jaw to fit how I wanted, but eventually we had a working Orc knee pad and I just had to glue it in place. I also thought it would make sense for him to keep the skull of a prominent foe faced and defeated in battle. Now there's a pretty good surface here around the belt actually for the glue to stick, but for a little bit of extra security with the resin on the plastic, I decided to pin the skull in place. I could then use some florist wire and glue it into the hole, trimming it to length. Once we attach this to the model, it will create essentially a super strong bond between the skull and belt, since it needs to bend and pull out the pin to actually pull off the model, meaning that it won't get knocked off nearly as easily as if I just use glue. One of the tricks I've found to line this sort of thing up is to use paint on the end of the pin to mark where you need to drill the hole on the belt. Once we've done our pilot hole, it kind of looks like I'm giving him some sort of surgery here, doesn't it? Once we've got the skull glued in place, we can simply push it in and we've got a super strong bond. So, now we're done with this one Primaris Vanguard veteran. I showed you all the techniques I would use on every single veteran using this one Marine. Then I moved on to doing the rest, mostly off camera. However, I did film any special or different techniques that I used for some of the other Marines. First off, I had this interesting hand that added a lot of expressiveness to one of my Marines. Next, I have these huge shoulder plates that I used on some of the Marines, and I had an idea to have a kind of half cape or strip of important material to that brother kind of hanging or like falling off of the pauldron. Perhaps it's a fallen Battle Brothers banner. Battle Brothers banner, Battle Brothers banner, Battle Brothers banner. Or some sort of hide from a large kill of an enemy they defeated. I went on creating this kind of cloth banner out of green stuff. First, I get the surface of my work area wet, and then I cut the green stuff to a decent length. I can then kind of conform and warp the green stuff around so it looks like flowy cloth. This is mostly just folding it over itself. Next, I put the green stuff into place and pushed it around into the model using a sculpting tool. I thought it extended a little bit long for my taste, so I cut it short using a simple pair of fingernail scissors. I made sure to get the blades wet so that they wouldn't stick to the green stuff and deform it, and then it's as simple as snip. I molded it around the arm to look like kind of the wind whipping it backwards and dragging it across the arm. Then I got the green stuff wet and gently wiped it flat to try and get rid of some of my finger marks or scratches I'd made into it throughout the process of sculpting it. Once we're done, we do have some leftover green stuff, so I'm going to use a texture roller that I bought to make it into something potentially usable later as a base for something. Another tactic I used for one of these capes was a bit that I found in one of my bits boxes. I actually have no idea what kit this is from, sorry about that, but it looked pretty good for a Dragon-y cape. The main issue I found was that it was just too wide for the pauldron, so I decided to cut it in half so I could use both halves for different models. I got out my saw and got to work. Once it was all sawed, I needed to clean up the shorn edge using my knife, and dry fitting it, it looks pretty darn good. But it sticks out a little bit too much at a diagonal, unnaturally. So I made a few cuts to the elbow, and that lets us fit the cape much better. I actually used two different types of glues to attach this cape. Plastic glue at the elbow, and then super glue it meets the resin, and I think it worked out pretty well. Those are pretty much all the techniques I used when creating my Primaris Vanguard veterans. You can see the full squad in all their glory right now, but I'll have all the individual models showing up in the background as I wrap up the video. Thank you all so much for watching. For a large portion of this video, I know I'm using various hobby products, many of which you do not need. However, I will include a link to anything I use in this video down in the description below. I know a lot of this video was my personal Vanguard veterans, but I hope it imparted some knowledge and useful information about how you could make your own Primaris Vanguard veterans. If you enjoyed the video or got something out of it, please leave me a like. It really helps, especially for smaller channels like mine to get noticed. And if you like this type of content or just want to hang around to see whenever I eventually get these guys painted, please subscribe to the channel and you won't miss any of my videos, hopefully, if YouTube works the way it's supposed to. But now there's a bell, so who knows. As always, thank you to those of you who've stuck with me through my past videos. I think there's a noticeable jump in quality with this one, and hopefully this is the kind of level you can come to expect moving forwards. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed and you have a great day.